And I'm now going to hand over to Mallika and Faye, who are talking about the UNCRC and participation for young children. And I know this is an issue so close to all of us in Scotland, so really excited to hand over to you.
Thank you, Amy. A very good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for coming to the session. And we are excited to be presenting in front of you part of the research project that Faye and I worked together on. And I know you've just said, Amy, that you are looking forward to hearing more about People's Voice, especially in Scotland. But I actually have to say that Scotland is a little bit ahead of England when it comes to children's rights, to be honest. So we have a lot to learn from you as well. So we are quite happy to be sharing our research project and some quick findings around People's Voice with you. Before we start talking about the projects, a very quick reminder of the structure of the seminar today, and we have taken the advice that Amy gave us. Just very quickly, we'll just talk about who we are and our research background. And so that will be more text-based. And then what we have done for today is we have taken more graphic examples to share with you. So we will share some examples of People's Voice in the image forms, and we'll be happy to talk about some of them. And if you have any questions, you can ask them later on. So some examples from our research. And of course, towards the end, what were the key findings and why do we believe that researches like these really matter to the lives of young children? So that will be the basic format of the presentation. And although we have got some text-based slides, but we are hoping that this will be more of a chatty session. So more like question and answers or discussions rather than, because the whole idea is to bridge the gap between researchers and practitioners. So we are hoping that you will feel at ease to ask any questions or discuss any points or make any comments that you would want to on the basis of what you see in a presentation today. A very, very quick and brief background, and Faye and I will be sharing some of the slides. So I probably will take lead in some, and then Faye will take lead in the other. And I'm a senior lecturer at Uncrc University, and Faye works in the research department. She's a research assistant in a university. She can tell you more about herself in a minute. And I teach mostly in early childhood programs, ranging from the undergraduate to doctoral programs. But we both are quite research active, and so we have been participating together in, especially in this project where we work together on People's Voice. So People's Voice was a part of a bigger project which was called the Creative Writing Through the Arts. And within that project, we were using some creative methods, some creative arts, for example, music, dance, drama, arts, some different intervention programs to help inspire children, young children, especially in early years, and also in primary school, like ranging from 4 to the age of 10, really, to use lots of creative methods to encourage people to develop their creative writing. And part of that project was to listen to children's voices, their views, how the interventions were going on, what can we do about those intervention programs, and how the pupils were taking those intervention programs, and any feedback they had. So the People's Voice was a part of a bigger project, which was on creative writing through the arts. And the project was funded by Paul Hamlin Foundation through the Royal Opera House Bridge. And within this project, we worked with 45 different primary schools in Essex in England. So that's a very brief, quick history of the project itself. And just quickly again to talk about like where it all originated from. So why our research? We wanted to use to test the use of participatory approaches, because one of the main criticisms of participatory research is that, especially in practice, when it comes to education and care context, that we have 30 children in the classroom, or we have 20 children, I'm a key worker for 20 or 15 or 10 children. How can I listen to individual voices, really? So this was very much a sort of project to tease out that can you work together, researchers and practitioners and teachers from different schools, can you work together to understand People's Voice? And from the same 45 different primary schools we were doing the project in. And then, of course, the question rises, why participatory approach? And it is on People's Voice. So participatory approaches was probably one of the best fits we thought to work with children. And especially we wanted to overcome that bridge between research and practice, that researchers, they come up with these airy-fairy methodological scientific ideas and they have no bearing with the classroom reality. So we wanted to break that myth, and we wanted to work together with the teachers and practitioners to try out what works in practice, and for us to learn from them what are the realities of the classroom life really. And of course, we wanted to create sort of multiple and shifting positions of expertise, that sometimes the common belief is the researchers are the knowledge bearers, and they come to the setting having no understanding of the practical life of school. So just creating that kind of democratic space where the powers can be shifted. And we respect the positions of expertise by everyone who's involved. At times we were in more power, at times the teachers were in more power. So to be creating those shifting positions of power and expertise between whoever was involved. And of course, the research has to be beneficial for all involved, so not us just getting the data, at the same time offer some opportunities to the teachers for their own professional development. So that is why for us, we thought that participatory approaches or the participatory methods were the right fit to listen to people's voice in classrooms, working in partnership with the teachers. And the way we went for it was, so all 45 teachers from those 45 schools were working with us, and teachers participated differently depending upon the research activities and depending upon the age group of the children. Like I said, it ranged from foundation stage to year 6 really. And the way it worked was we did a lot of co-construction of activities, and we have just included one example here. Like this is something that what is people voice? It may mean different things to different people. First of all, we wanted to have a common basic understanding of the concept. So a very simple example, nothing too scientific, like I use a flip chart really, where we all agreed how to define people voice within this particular context, and what it means to teachers, what it means to researchers, and what could be a common definition that could work in both context. So the teachers used to come in twilight sessions, and where we would share a lot of information with them. We shared some research ideas, research methods and methodologies, and they will share their practical knowledge and their practical examples with us. And we would use those twilight sessions to co-construct some common meanings, some common concepts that were used throughout the project. And after the twilight sessions, Faye and I used to go and visit all like 45 different primary schools over a period of 3 years. And we will talk to the pupils, we will talk to the class teachers, we will just record whatever we would see in the display boards, or we will look at the classroom work that children were producing to collect some evidence on people's voice. So it wasn't we were not asking too much from the teachers. The idea was to encourage them to continue doing what they were doing, with a little bit of moderations of including or making people's voice more explicit within the methods and the teaching strategies that they were adopting. So we could then see how research works in practice and how practice can in turn inform the research ideas. And of course, the policy context is really important, both for research and practice, because policy does influence the way we prioritize research. At the same time, policy does influence what would you, it encourages children to participate in a way in which they feel comfortable, not just a speech or writing, but using various creative activities or various creative mechanisms to express themselves. So that especially Article 12 and 13 were one of the main foci of the policy context in international context. And then Faye may want to say a little bit more about the Ofsted and Education Healthcare Program, maybe.
Yep. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Faye Acton. So I'm a research assistant that supported on the Creative Writing Through the Arts project. My background is I used to be a primary school teacher, and then worked up to be an inclusion leader, inclusion manager, Senko, all the different terminology that there is. That's what I was. So the policies and the practices within schools were something that was very familiar to me, and we were able to incorporate those into the project and show the relevancy between pupil voice and the different things that we're asked of as teachers. So obviously Ofsted is a big one. So within Ofsted inspections, there is a focus on pupil voice and pupil opinion. So being able to incorporate pupil voice practices into everyday school life and teach into classrooms and to different ways that we communicate with children it was really important to be able to have it as a formalized task if needed, or just those informal interactions as well. So it has a big relevancy with Ofsted. But then obviously the education healthcare plans. So there was a big shift in how these were moved from statements to EHCPs. And at the beginning, there is that one-page profile for children and young people. And there's a big focus that should be the pupil's voice, not written for them. So a lot of the different strategies that we worked with teachers on this project actually helped them to think of ideas for how to encourage pupil voice to come through more on those one-page profiles. So moving away from it has to be a written page profile to being more creative and thinking about the use of drawings and photographs and diagrams and how we can really involve the children in creating their own profiles.
Yeah, thank you. So basically the idea was to work in partnership with teachers to introduce, to revisit maybe some of the ideas that we know that work in practice, to introduce teachers to different examples of using participatory methods in the classroom, and also to welcome any new methods that teachers would want to try, what works within their particular school or setting context. So it was very much creating that sort of shared space of sharing expertise, of sharing knowledge, of sharing ideas, and sharing practical insights with each other. And like I initially said, sometimes the main criticism of participatory research and methodologies is that it doesn't quite work in group care context, because as practitioners, we work with a group of children and not really with so much on a one-to-one basis. So what we did, we experimented with some individual participatory methods and some group participatory methods to see what works, what would work or what may not work in practice. And like I say, it was a very shared expertise. So not all ideas that teachers used were given by us. Some of them just came up with their own ideas. They shared those examples with us, and we learned a lot in the process as well. So this, thinking of it like a seesaw, really, there were days when we were much probably more regarded as experts, and there were days when the teachers were regarded more as experts. So having that real balance between the shift of power and the shift in expertise and the sharing of expertise with each other. So we will share some examples of, like, from classroom, what the teachers did and what worked really well for the teachers. So these are some very simple examples which they use with individual pupils and also with a group of children in their classroom. And you would see some are like more just collecting feedback, some are like helping them to think more, some are more reflective in nature, that can you reflect on what you learn, what could be done better. So there are different examples of different examples of encouraging people to share their views, their ideas on different classroom activities. So these are some of the examples where teachers were using more individualistic-based methods of encouraging pupil participation or of sharing of their views and voices with the teacher and with their peers in the classroom.
So if you have it, please just have a look at some of them. So the flower that you can see on the left-hand side, they called a confidence flower. So the teacher was encouraging the children after a task to place their face on a different part of the flower, depending on how confident they felt with completing that task. So you had the pot, the stem, the leaves, and the actual flower. So depending on where they felt they were, that was where they placed their face. So the pot, they felt they were still very much at the very beginning, and they were still developing their roots as to how they were going to continue with that task. Moving to the roots of the leaves, where they felt that they were at the beginning of it, they were getting it. They still had room to grow. And then the flower was where they felt that they were in control of it, they knew what they were doing, and they were happy with that task. So you can see the photo to the right of that is where the children were were working out where they were going to put their face, and that changed throughout the activity. So if it was a week's writing activity, they would go and move their face accordingly as to how they felt they were progressing throughout that task. The photo below it with the girl with the iPad, so that particular session was I think it was a dance session or a drama session that the teacher had recorded, and the children were then evaluating their input into that task by watching it back, watching themselves, and then creating their writing and their evaluation through that. So what started as a group task, through their performance, they then moved to that individual method through the use of the technology. So there are a couple of other examples on there. So there are self-evaluation sheets where the children were creating at the end of their task, how they felt that they had progressed through that task. They're more complex through writing, so the picture in the middle with the faces, but then also the scale from 1 to 5 is a very quick grasp of where they felt that they were. So a lot of these can be used into plenary activities and that self-evaluation, through to storyboards at the bottom, and then the barometers and the thermometers and the top left, very similar to the confidence flower, where they would place how confident they felt. So a lot of these strategies are possibly strategies that teachers are already using. I know when I was teaching, I was using some similar things, but it's taking it from just using it, having it as okay, this is where you think you are, to then involving that conversation as to why they've placed their face where they placed it, or why they evaluated themselves where they are, to help with that communication, to help with that dialogue, to move forward and to ensure that the children are involved in their learning going forward. So then some of the group methods as well. So, and the creative part of it, the dance, the drama, the visual arts, really came to life through going and seeing the classrooms and seeing the activities that the children and the pupils were doing, and we were able to get some really nice photos of evidence of how they were putting that into practice. So the dance and drama was great to see. So there's the couple of photos on there where you can see the children are working together as groups. These particular photos were where they were reenacting specific scenes from a book. So obviously the project was all based around English, so they were very focused around different stories and poems and different texts that they were engaging within their curriculum. So they were bringing to life different scenes, different characters, creating mood, which all helped them to then go back to the classroom and put that into writing. So it's how they were able to transfer visually and physically onto the page. So there was a lot of reenactment. Working walls, something that if you're a teacher or working within schools, I'm sure you're very familiar with a working wall. And it's bringing that to life. So it's not just something static on the wall. It was something that was constantly spoken about and updated throughout, and the links back to writing were made very clear. Group input into planning. So how, again, on the working walls or using the mini whiteboards, how the children could work together to group their ideas and speak about that with each other before they were then working on their individual tasks. So again, a lot of what you may already be using, but taking that one step further to really listen to the pupils within those tasks.
Thank you, Faye. And this slide shows an example from another project, although we are primarily talking about creative writing through the arts project, and the evidence is mainly coming from there. But this is a project that was done between England and India. So the reason we have included this is just to show that how powerful sometimes like expressive arts can be for children. Because when we think about people's voice, the most dominant idea is you talk to them, but not all children are confident speakers, and not everyone would want to talk to you about their ideas, or write are not articulate speakers or fluent writers. So like Article 13 of the UNCRC states that they should be given opportunities to express themselves in a way that they feel like. So this is, we thought would be a good example to share again how to use children's drawings. And in this project, it was more like working with children to understand their perceptions of the classroom or the school experiences. And the ones on the green or the blue are the ones where the children were asked, these are 4 and 5 year olds, where the children were asked to draw a picture of their actual school experience, like what do you actually do in school when you come to the classroom. So these green and blue ones are the representations from 4 and 5 year olds about their actual school experience. The top one is from England and the bottom blue one is from India. And you can see it's very similar experience of being in a traditional classroom where the children are sitting together or maybe separately, but the teacher is in the authority position asking the questions. Probably it's tiny for you, can't really see. In both contexts, they have drawn teacher asking questions about either literacy or numeracy. And then after the actual school experience images were collected, the children were asked to draw a drawing of what they would ideally want to do in the school. So not surprisingly, they all wanted to play with their friends outdoors. And they were quite similar, again, ideas between England and India, where they wanted to be with their friends and playing some sort of games outdoors. And but within the drawings from India, the children did represent a lot of like facilities as well, like good fans, because I remember when the data was collected, it was hot summer and some of the fans were not working. So in the either school, they did talk about having some better facilities in schools. But generally speaking, in both contexts, the actual school experience was like dictated by the teacher, traditional classroom layout, and the other school was very informal, relaxed with friends, and also teacher being in the background outdoors with them. So again, the reason we included this was to show sometimes trying out different creative methods can actually help you to understand a child's view much more clearly than being or than over relying on speech or writing. So just having a play with different creative methods, what would work, and different things work with different children. Like Faye was talking about different examples from dance and drama and music and arts. Some children prefer to express themselves more through drama, whereas others did not. So just getting an understanding of the different children would use different ways or different methods or strategies to express themselves. So for as a teacher, researcher, practitioner, we probably need to provide those opportunities for them. So these were just some of the examples. We do have a lot more examples. We are constrained by time. So if you ever want to have a chat with us, please feel free to contact us. Our email addresses are there towards the end of the presentation. So some examples to share what these are the tried and tested methods that we have seen do work with children in the classroom, and the teachers have tested most of these methods as well. And like Faye said, not everything is brand new. Probably these are things that teachers, practitioners do it every day, but taking it to one level up, like so what, as the seminar series is so what next? So what can be, so there's a difference between hearing and listening. So what can be done about it? And maybe encouraging more conversations within the groups, so children learn to respect each other's views as well. It's not always about me and I and my view and what I want. It's more about let's do this collectively, let's do this together, and sharing and working alongside those community building or co-construction ideas. So the key findings, probably you can have a quick read as well, but the main findings were, we'll just conclude within a sentence or two, was the children with the use of more regular use of pupil voice activities, children definitely were much more involved in the learning journeys. They felt much more confident to speak to the teachers, to speak to the peers about their views, because they were using different methods, not just written means, but they were using different creative methods to express themselves, to work with each other, and to work with the teacher as well. So overall, there was the teachers said that the children felt much more confident to participate in classroom activities, and they were much more relaxed to even say that I don't get this. I'm not doing so good in this, but I'm doing a good job in this part, like with the confidence building flower, for example. So overall, there was, and the teachers reported there was an increase in the confidence level, and the regular use of pupil voice activities helped to create a culture of sharing, culture of, again, shifting of the expertise between teachers and pupils in the classroom as well. And we have included some quick examples of reflections from pupils and reflections from teachers. We will leave this for you to have a quick read of. And because the project was creative writing through the arts, so you will see some of the reflections are sort of in between pupil voice and the creative activities being used in the class. And some quick reflections from teachers.
So these slides will be available if you want to see them again after the session, just if you want to go through in a bit more detail. So I know we're having to go quite quickly.
And particularly like that yellow brown one, like I'm more confident to have less control over pupils. As any adult, you know, you want to be in full control. So it takes a little while to let go of that control. But once you do get to that stage, it's lovely because it becomes much more reciprocal. The relationship is much more mutual in classroom as well. And by no means we're suggesting for the teachers to lose their voice or for the researchers to lose their voice if they work with the teachers or practitioners. It's that mutual relationship that needs to be established. Like we said, it's almost like a seesaw. At times you are the experts, and other times pupils might be the experts. So why really? Yeah, go on, Faye. Yeah.
So thinking about, you know, one of the big questions was, well, you know, why does this matter to the lives of young children? And so through the project the creative writing project that we did, these were just some of the points that came out from the children as to why pupil voice was important to them and what they gained. So they had the ownership of learning. So they were able to say what was working for them, what wasn't working for them, the different strategies that they felt they could utilize in different lessons. So not just through English and through writing, but throughout the curriculum, and to enact that change in school. So they felt that they were being heard throughout the school. So there's student councils and different things like that we looked at as part of pupil voice. So not just within the classroom, but how their voice was going wider throughout the school. We've already sort of spoken about things such as the confidence and motivation, but that attainment as well. So being able to include that creativity back into some of the more traditional subjects. And you'll have seen on the previous slide that one of the teachers was saying it reignited her enthusiasm and creativity she had in an NQT. So bringing that in for the children's experience, we found did have a positive effect on their attainment. So transferable skills, their communication skills, and that positive interaction. But it's that sustained pupil voice and that sustained activity. So not just a one-off at the end of a session or at the end of a topic. It's having that going all the way through the lesson, all the way through the topic and the term, brought about some of these positive changes.
And like Faye touched upon that, we observed that while we were doing the project with these schools, it had almost had a ripple effect. So there were other wider participatory activities going on at the same time, taking inspiration from the project. I remember one school, for the meal time, they started talking to children. So they were listening to pupils, like, what would you like to eat? You know, giving them a choice. So they started doing questionnaires with children to elicit pupil voice on their choice for school dinners, for example. So if there is consistency and if you can show the results, the evidence is there to show that it's having a positive impact, then it can almost have a ripple effect, and the culture might change, or may shift more towards working in partnership with children rather than working for children all the time. And just some quick suggestions we thought, because if you are hoping to do anything like this, if you're hoping to work with researchers from universities, or you are hoping to work with other colleagues or teachers or practitioners from other settings, then just some simple points we thought would be important to take away from our project was that if any such project goes on, it has to be supportive of teachers or practitioners' individual learning and their professional goals. It shouldn't be a one-way or one-direction project. It should benefit teachers for their professional development as well. And there should be reciprocity, or there should be parity in the research relationship. So it's not tokenistic. It's or just not instrumental. It's basically productive for both parties involved. And we must try, for any such projects, we must try to bring the academic and the practitioner knowledge together in less hierarchical way. There shouldn't be any hierarchy because everyone is an expert within their own context. So trying to create the kind of dialogical democratic space where there can be shift in expertise, there can be shift in power, and we work together. So just some quick pointers we thought you may want to take away if you are hoping to engage in any such project or activities in the future, or you may be doing it right now, because lots of this, like Faye said, that it's not new. We do this already, but taking it just a little bit further and thinking about it from the pupil voice perspective, like, so what next? What can we do about this? This is quite helpful that way. So that was us talking about the project, and we welcome any questions that you may have, or any comments, any observations, anything you would like to share from